All right, let's have Mr. Abubakar, lawyer to Very Dark Man, joining us on the program now. Mr. Abubakar, good morning and welcome to the morning brief.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here. Good morning.
All right, before we get into the details of the doctor, let's understand the scale, and the evidence to prove that indeed the kidney of this young man was removed. How did he discover it? The subsequent medical reports that proved that his kidney was removed. Let's have the details.
Yeah, when the young man approached the Martin Vincent initiative, the MBOI, which is headed by a man people know as a very dark man, we were quite very skeptical because we didn't really believe that a young man would go to a hospital and his vital organs will be unlawfully harvested. So we asked him to come back and then get some medical proof. So the young man came back with a medical report to show the absence of his left kidney. We were quite curious ourselves, so we decided to also embark on verifying the medical document it came with, the medical report it came with. So we went to two separate hospitals in Abuja, a reputable private hospital and another government hospital, which is the Federal Medical Center in Jabi in Abuja here, where it was confirmed that indeed the young man's left kidney has been removed. I must also add that organ transplant in Nigeria, strictly sensu, is not a crime. But when certain modalities are not fulfilled, or when certain conditions are not met, or there's some sort of unlawful harvesting, then that's what makes it a crime. So in this context, in relation to this young man, and this young man, not just the young man, because there are quite several of them as we get to find out, it's purely a criminal enterprise.
So some medical reports, and I'd like you to verify this for us, maybe from the doctors of this young man and the young man itself, say that a person is able to function with one kidney. But let's have the medical health condition of this young man. Talk to us about what it's like, what it's looking like currently.
Yeah, one good kidney can function properly. Preferably, it's better too, but one can function properly. The young man is a very young person. I think he's about 22 years of age or thereabout. I can't really recall. So he's still a very young person. So he still has a very good single functional kidney that can really serve. But in his case, now the certain procedures were not strictly complied with. And so I think after a while, when the young man did it, after about a month or thereabout, the young man started seeing some pulse come out from the left side of his kidney, of his ribs, just beneath the rib cartridge level. So the young man now went to open up to his mother and informed the mother that, I think he explained to the mother. So I think after the kidney transplant was the kidney was unlawfully harvested, they pleaded with the young man, and I think they gave him $1,300 or thereabout, about 1.5 million naira in Nigerian value at that time. So they gave him just this kind of, okay, just take this and shut up. And then the procedure they also adopted, I think is quite very fraudulent and then quite very unfortunate. The young man's name was changed by an affidavit where he was given a name which is not his name, just to conceal the criminal enterprise they intended to embark on. So the young man's name was changed, his identity was changed. He was asked to go to a court to deposit an affidavit. A lawyer was involved too. He would post an affidavit where these procedures were not carried out in line with international best practices and in line with the laws of Nigeria, particularly the National Health Act, which is the primary law which governs this particular area of kidney transplant and other related issues, and then the NAPTIC parts, the Prohibition Against Persons Act of 2025. So these laws were clearly not complied with in harvesting these particular organs of this young man or these young persons, and that's why it became a legal issue as we have it.
So how many, just as a reminder to our audience, how many young men were affected, the victims this time?
From what we learned of, a lot of them are quite very skeptical of coming forth because of the publicity it has not generated. But I think they're quite them. In short, I have it on good authority that most of those boys around Massacre, Nyanya, Maraba, a lot of them are engaged in this unlawful some of those hospitals lure these young men into harvesting their organs illegally without complying with the legal process. But think about 10 or more than that now are not involved. But we have coming forth now.
That's quite a number. So, in terms of complicity, so where I wanted to go with that question was the fact that is it a question of the young men or the doctors taking advantage of them, or there was a level of consent, so that we're clear on what we're dealing with? Because I'm looking at it based on the total number of persons who are involved. So from your record as a lawyer, these young men did not know that whatever was being done to them was actually about harvesting their organs. Is that what you're saying?
This is another form of poverty weaponization. We have vulnerable young men and unethical doctors. Now, these young men are vulnerable in the context that these young men needed money. They are short of funds. We have all sorts of vices in the country that we have today now. So these young men, because they are vulnerable, these doctors they have agents through which they reach out to these young men and they lure them in, and then they harvest their organs and then give them some form of financial inducement after the process. Now, under the law, under the Nigerian law, both Nigerian law and international obligations, which Nigeria is a signatory to, any form of financial inducements that emanate from a particular hospital, medical practitioner, or it would be donate to an unwilling or even a willing donor. Once there is financial inducement or exchange of funds, as you have in this instance, it becomes unlawful. So in this context, these young men were actually approved. They were not told they were harvesting their organs at that time. Some of them went to some of the hospitals for medical conditions, and the hospital now check and discover that they have very good and strong viable kidneys, which will suffice for the intended transplant they want to do. Like in some of these instances, I was informed on good authority that some of these donors, which the hospital sold these kidneys, some of these donors, which the hospital sold some of these kidneys to, pay as high as 50 to 70 million naira. And these hospitals, because they've now turned it into a business, organ harvesting is now a big business in this part of the world. They take these kidneys from these vulnerable young men, some of them underage clearly, and then they give to these persons who require them, and then they take a lot of money from them and give these young persons peanuts without passing through the appropriate legal process. It's just the act of taking a kidney from a person under some sort of inducement and give it to another person for financial gains is a crime itself. So both the hospital and the medical practitioners and the doctors that are involved have already committed a crime under the law in this area. So when you ask a young person, or under whatever context and circumstances, to donate a kidney to you, and then you take these kidneys and sell to somebody else, then it is a crime. So for the donation of an organ to be lawful, there must be informed consent of an adult person. There must also be no form of financial inducement. In this context, there were financial inducement and there was no proper consent. And there was fraud in the sense of forging an affidavits with a different name, just to ensure that the identity of this young person is concealed, because probably they must have foreseen that we'll have this kind of legal issues in the future.
Just before we let you go, so confirm for us, perhaps, if the family members of these boys were aware or in the know about this decision.
They were not no family member, and this raises other ethical issues, which we think are quite very fundamental. No family member of this young man was involved. None of their parents was carried along. It was after the entire thing boomerang and became an issue that their parents got involved and their parents got to know. So this hospital just let this young man take their kidney and give them peanuts to go away. I think this is quite unfortunate. It shouldn't be. And since we have a situation, I think it's something we must fight legally within the FCT. We cannot have such situations in Abuja here.
Well, we must thank you very much for bringing this issue to our notice, and also thank your client for this social responsibility. And the awareness must continue to deter organ harvesting and the illegal removal of organs of unsuspecting young persons to exploit them for financial benefit. Mr. Marshall Abubakar is a legal practitioner and lawyer to social media influencer Very Dark Man. Thank you for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.